Some movies are such duds that they don't just lose a studio millions, they also put entire companies out of business. Here's a look back at some historic mega bombs that straight up bankrupted studios. Riding parent company Warner Brothers' coattails and the success that came with the Harry Potter films, New Line Cinema wanted another massive fantasy hit following their extremely lucrative and award-winning Lord of the Rings trilogy. So it put a version of The Golden Compass, author Philip Pullman's first entry in the His Dark Materials trilogy, into production. New Line pumped $200 million into the project, more than it had spent on anything, including The Lord of the Rings. To offset production costs, the company pre-sold the overseas rights to Compass, meaning that when the film hit theaters outside of North America, it wouldn't recoup a dime. That made profit virtually impossible, as did the film's relatively small $70 million domestic take. This fiasco was the main reason Warner Brothers absorbed New Line into its existing film production divisions in February 2008, ousting Chief Bob Shea and 90% of New Line's employees. As one of the most popular sitcoms of the 2000s, the American version of The Office led to movie careers for several of its stars, notably Steve Carell, John Krasinski, and Ed Helms. While Rainn Wilson, who portrayed Dunder Mifflin weirdo beat farmer Dwight Schrute, has graced the big screen plenty of times in his own right, he arguably hasn't had the same mainstream appeal as his Office co-stars. Wilson's first shot at leading man status came courtesy of the 2008 comedy The Rocker. Despite the stellar cast, which also included Emma Stone and Teddy Geiger as Wilson's young bandmates, audiences didn't think The Rocker rocked. It grossed just $2.6 million over its opening weekend, at the time the worst performance ever for a widely released movie. It quickly disappeared from theaters, and soon thereafter, so did the division of Fox that released the film. Fox Atomic had been created in 2007 to bring out cool comedies and edgy horror movies. In early 2009, thanks in part to the spectacular failure of The Rocker, Fox shut down the group.
How dare you?
Excuse me?
How dare you call yourself a musician?
In 1994, Coralco Pictures had two projects in the works, the pirate adventure Cutthroat Island and the Arnold Schwarzenegger epic Crusade. Short on funds, Coralco decided to not waste another penny on Crusade, essentially throwing away the $13 million that it already spent on the movie, placing all its eggs in one basket, the pirate movie. A foolhardy move for sure. The only successful pirate movie in the previous decade or so was Hook, but Coralco thought that this genre would be just the thing to return the company to financial solvency. On screen, Cutthroat Island looked like $1 million, which is about 1% of how much it cost to make the movie and 1/10 of what it earned. Coralco spent an astounding $98 million on Cutthroat Island, only to watch the movie sink at the box office with a $10 million haul. The studio ultimately had no faith in its expensive last gasp. The company filed for bankruptcy in November 1995, 6 weeks before Cutthroat Island hit theaters. From Tekken to Postal to Super Mario Bros., movies based on video games are almost categorically awful. One of the better ones according to critics? Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. One of the first computer-animated movies, it's an absolutely stunning piece of work and a technical achievement, as it's the first movie to render everything digitally, including largely realistic human characters. Starring the substantial voice talents of Ming-Na Wen, Alec Baldwin, and Ving Rhames, The Spirits Within is based on a long-running, thoughtful, and mystical series of video games. With 142 million units sold overall, Final Fantasy is among the best-selling game franchises ever, but that's still a small cross-section of the movie-going public. The film apparently lacked crossover appeal because despite all that amazing animation, Final Fantasy brought in a weak $32 million in North America. That wouldn't be so terrible if filmmakers hadn't spent $137 million to bring it to the screen. The film was the first ever produced by Square Pictures, an offshoot of gaming company Square. It was so expensive that it would also be the division's last, as the parent company soon absorbed it into the newly formed Square Enix. One of the biggest emerging markets for movies is China, and Global Road set out to get in on that potential box office while also making movies that North American filmgoers might enjoy. It failed both segments. Desperately in debt to creditors like Viacom, Disney, and NBC Universal, in the summer of 2018, Global Road started laying off staff and selling the distribution rights to movies not yet released. One of those unreleased films was City of Lies, about the murder investigation of Notorious B.I.G. City of Lies certainly couldn't earn any money sitting in a vault somewhere, but the movie's movies Global Road did release were financially disastrous. Despite a cast that included Jeff Goldblum, Dave Bautista, and Jodie Foster, the weird sci-fi drama Hotel Artemis grossed just $6.7 million domestic. Another major release, the family film Show Dogs, caused some controversy and cost the studio a lot of money when it had to be recut to eliminate some inappropriate scenes about a dog getting its privates fondled. Surprise, surprise, it still bombed.
You waited for me to get back here for that, didn't you?
Israel-based Bank Leumi, which had fronted Global Road a lot of City of Lies costs, filed suit when the studio defaulted on a $10.8 million payment. In September 2018, Global Road filed for bankruptcy after a rough year didn't produce the mega successful hits it needed to stay afloat.